So, welcome everyone to Warrior Wednesdays. This is where we talk to people who are facing obstacles. We really want people to be inspired and know you're not alone out there. We often talk about people who are fighting the fight, but what we don't often talk about in society is people who lose the battle but have to keep on with life. And that's why I'm so thrilled to have Laura Crandall here, who's the co-founder of SUDC. Laura, thank you for being here on Warrior Wednesdays.
Oh, thank you, Matt.
So, let's start from the beginning. I know it's not an easy story to tell, but how did you get involved?
Like most people, not in any good way. I was 29 at the time, just celebrated my 29th birthday, the real one. And my daughter Maria, who was 15 months at the time, went down for a nap. And when I went to wake her up, she was, the worst nightmare. She was unresponsive in her crib. I'm a trained physical therapist. I knew how to do CPR and called 911, did everything I could, but it was too late. Really, the police, the EMTs, the hospital, I was so grateful for all the efforts everyone did, but they couldn't revive her.
An unimaginable loss. Now, SUDC stands for Sudden Unexplained Death in Childhood.
Yes.
So, which means there's no answer as to why.
Yeah, it's really a category of death that just eludes science right now. What we're doing right now is not really uncovering the truth in some of these children. About 400 times a year, children after their first birthday up to 18 die where we are not able to determine what exactly caused their death.
So that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. Is you've seen this, and when there isn't an answer, how does that impact getting closure for those who are still around?
Yeah, people say, I think in society we have this idea that kind of you get through grief and grief is then over. Mm-hmm. I don't know for people who lose a child and understand that, but I don't think you ever get over losing your child. I think if I live to be 100, I will still miss Maria, and I will still kind of feel like the whole thing was so surreal. Like, how did this happen? How did she go from this happy, thriving toddler to not living one day and no one be able to tell me why? So I think that it is really a constant struggle. And I think the many families that we work with, there's this kind of simmering level of anxiety. I think as humans, we like certainty, and we really don't like living with not being able to put all the pieces together. And this is just kind of this constant thing that you need to learn to live with, which gets easier over time, but never easy.
So that's what this is all about. For those people who are out there, and people face all kinds of obstacles, what were the techniques or ways that you learned how to deal with that uncertainty and how to move through that grief?
Yeah. For myself, I would say that I came up with particular coping skills for me that worked. Mm-hmm. I think grief is a very unique experience. And I think one of the nice things about the SUDC Foundation and bringing so many families together is that people kind of throw out what coping skills work for them. Sure. And the newer families kind of be like, oh, that sounds good to me. I'll try that. Or no, that's totally not me. I'm not going to try that. But this idea of really being open to trying new things, for me, in the very, very early days, I would get on my bike and ride. Mm-hmm. For me, I was a very, I would say, physical griever. I had to kind of work out and exercise, mm-hmm. and that would make the grief come out. And, I'd have a good cry, and then I'd feel a little bit lighter for a day or so until it kind of built back up again. And for me, exercise was really, really important.
Well, you speak about the families who SUDC, the foundation, has supported, and that's how I came to know it. As one of my friends lost his son, Jake Myers. I'm wearing the shirt. We work to keep his memory alive. And what amazes me, though, and what I've seen in my friends, and particularly what you did, though, is so many people will try to take that grief and, as you say, deal with it. It never goes away. But you chose to do something about it in co-founding SUDC. Now, what motivated you to do that, to take that grief, and how do you find a way to make it something positive?
I think looking back, I probably didn't know exactly what I was getting into, although I know I could not sit by and not do anything. And Matt, I had this kind of feeling of like being an older woman and meeting a young woman who had gone through this and not being able to really answer the question of why didn't I do something about it. And I think that I was really motivated by, I really didn't want anyone else to go through this. And I still feel that way. And I think that Jakey's family feels the same way. Like,
Absolutely.
they're, you know, in the big picture, there's nothing we'd want more than to have our kids back. But I think secondly from that, the second thing we most important want is we don't want anyone else to go through this.
And it's amazing what SUDC has done. And I know we're heading into SUDC Awareness Month, which is March. And to me, again, this is one of those things that I think, unfortunately, people don't like to talk about it because it is so uncomfortable for them to imagine the loss, to picture it. And what I love is how you're confronting it. But that's one of the things I think is obviously when you do your work with your foundation, it must stir up the memories. How have you been able to take that grief, make it positive, and deal with it on an ongoing basis instead of kind of running away from it?
You know, I think you mentioned trying to deal with it head on. I think really being open and honest, I think, is one of the things. Otherwise, you kind of bottle it up inside and it has nowhere to go. I think being able to educate other people to say, you know, this really is a problem. We've never had any targeted NIH funds to really study this thoroughly. I do think that there is a channel to better understanding through research. And I think that commitment to try to raise funds and get more research going, you're part of a more positive future. And you're committing yourself to making a brighter future for all children, in memory of our own children who we've lost. And, you know, really, as, you know, to help anyone. I mean, we would do this, we do this every day for strangers because we just don't want anyone else to suffer what we did.
So when people, one of the things is people don't often know how to talk to people who are going through the grief. And I know when my friends went through it, the thing that helped them was talking to people who had experienced what they'd gone through. But for people who are out there who are near someone who's suffering, well, you know, what has SUDC learned are ways that people can support those who are going through this grief?
Yeah, we have some really nice information on our website at sudc.org, specifically on how people can help those grieving. I think, as you mentioned, this is a really, really hard subject, and it's most parents' worst nightmare. So to talk about it sometimes is to really tackle your own fears, knowing that you're there. I think, you know, when I think back to my family and friends, at the beginning, I wasn't a big talker about it. And I didn't really feel like being social. But those people who called over and over again, and I didn't take their messages and I didn't call them back, I mean, each and every time, that was such a sign of love and support for me that they didn't know it at the time because I, you know, didn't respond to their calls, but was so supportive to know people loved and care for me and were going to stick it out with me rather than shielding themselves from the pain.
To me, what was so amazing watching people go through it was seeing the importance of support. As you look back now, so it was 97?
Yes, 97.
For 20 years. If you could talk to yourself back then and tell, you know, what advice would you give yourself, or what would you tell yourself just before it was going to happen or just after that you think would be the best advice you could get?
I think now I can hear the helicopters.
Yeah.
I think to be gentle on yourself. I think a lot of people in grief are really hard on themselves and they say, I'm not doing this as well as I should be better by now, I should be doing more. And I really tell people, you know, this is the time to really just take care of yourself and be gentle on yourself. This is an extreme emotional, traumatic experience, and it's physically exhausting. I mean, people think about the emotion of it and the weight of the grief emotionally, but it's absolutely physically exhausting. And the physical side effects of it, you know, it's really hard to keep your attention and your memory and keep things straight. And all of those things. I think my advice to people is, you know, when something like this were ever to happen to you, it's a time where you take all the support you can from everyone around you.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the support we have at the foundation, where families can talk to other families going through it, as supportive as family and friends can be, thankfully, they probably have not gone through something exactly like this.
Sure.
To talk to someone else through email or the phone or, you know, online, and really ask those really hard questions, and get those honest answers, I think hopefully is a nice bridge to support through those affected, as well as your family and friends who are trying so hard to support you.
Well, and what's really interesting to me when you say take it easier on yourself is that idea that you've said that this grief will never go away, and the idea that you're somehow going to wake up one day and it'll be gone. The idea of you're going to learn how to deal with it.
Yeah.
But I love that idea of supporting, just being there to support. So that's what's interesting to me, because I know so many people have this grief. And what does it feel like, though, when you can take your experience and help someone who's going through, and you know what they've been through?
You know, when I talk to families on the phone and they ask me something that's kind of difficult to talk about, and I'll tell them, you know, a way that I handled something similar, and they're so grateful, you know, that I'm sharing this with them. And I say, you know, those lessons were so hard learned for me.
Mm-hmm.
It really does make me feel a lot better to put that information to use to help someone else and make their road maybe a little bit easier. I'm so grateful for those opportunities to make that information helpful to somebody else.
I think, to me, that's an incredible idea, that these people who've had this suffering can turn it into something positive, and then feel that satisfaction from it, where that hard learned. And I think that's what you've done with SUDC. So I want people to know more, so they can SUDC.org. What do people need to know about SUDC Awareness Month in March? How can people make a difference?
Oh, great. Well, they can go to our website. We have different things going on each week of the month. They can follow us on Facebook, on the SUDC Foundation Facebook page. You can share information. We have little one-page information. Most people and a lot of physicians even don't know about SUDC. And so we have these little information brochures. You know, you can educate a person during the month. You can do a random act of kindness in memory of Jakey or any other children that has gone before. And there's a lot of nice ideas out there. Obviously, you can support the foundation financially, but there's a lot of things that you can do throughout the month to join us in really nice ways to raise awareness of this and remember our kids in a positive way and make the future brighter for all kids.
I love it. We're going to be donating $250 in honor of Jake and Maria to support SUDC. And, you know, I when I think about what I've gone through and with arthritis, and obviously on a much greater level, I know for my friends, Steve and Heidi, what SUDC has meant to them. The way I would describe it is, it's not the family you asked for, but it is the family you need. So I just want to salute you on what you've done. I know it's still obviously not easy to talk about, but I appreciate your courage on here, and I hope so many people can draw inspiration from what you've gone through and how you've turned it into such an amazing, positive thing to honor the memory of your daughter.
Thank you so much, Matt. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, that's Warrior Wednesdays. This one has been a heavy one, but an amazing one. So check out SUDC.org, and remember, everyone, keep fighting.